Welcome back to the 80s VHS project. This is episode 6. In all the previous episodes, it was just like step-by-step procedures on how I was getting it all done. And even in the last one, I went into an excessive detailed video of how I got the first one done, the 8-inch, okay, which turned out awesome. Please watch episode 5 so you can see how all the steps I went through to get there. In episode 6, I'm not going to drag you through all those steps again. I'm kind of going to get right to the meat of it. Weird statement for a vegetarian. But it's basically just showing you that I've already got the 10, 12, and the 14, for lack of a better way of describing it, the wrap done. So I'm going to go ahead and explain what the 10, the 12, and the 14 are going to have VHS-wise. So let's start with the 10-inch, okay? My showcase VHS on the 10-inch will be Ghostbusters. Above it, Spaceballs, and then wrapped around, I've got Airplane, Willy Wonka, Arthur, a little bit of Legal Eagles there, Jaws, Raising Arizona, Money Pit, Rocky 4. Why Rocky 4 and not any other Rockies? Well, I will include Rocky 1, but let's face it, Rocky 2 and Rocky 3 were not great. The soundtracks were okay, but Rocky 4, when he goes to Russia, that's the one I wanted to include on this one. Lean on Me, which was my first exposure to Morgan Freeman, great movie. The Natural, and a little bit of the overlapping VHS. So the overlapping VHS on this will be The Great Outdoors, and you can see that the tail end of that is there. So yeah, that's going to be the 10-inch. Inside will be the covers, or the back covers of it. And I do cut these down a little bit so that the circumference inside the shells are obviously smaller than the outside. So I try to do that so that they will all meet up. It's not going to be perfect, but they'll meet up to the face side of the VHS. So that's the 10-inch. Now we'll move on to the 12-inch, okay? So the showcase piece on this one is going to be Coming to America, okay? Above it, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, I've got Pee-wee's Big Adventures. I've got Heathers, Iron Eagle, which honestly, I liked Iron Eagle better than I liked Top Gun. I'm sorry. Louis Gossett Jr. is great in that movie. A little bit of Vice Versa, The Naked Gun, Living Daylights. Same thing with the Rocky. Why the Timothy Dalton era? That was just my era of James Bond. I had a little bit of exposure to the Roger Moore, but I associate Roger Moore more with Cannonball. So I liked The Living Daylights, okay? The overlapping piece will be Back to the Future 3, which you can make the argument that's not 80s. Yes, it's true, it's not 80s. I even have a little bit of Forrest Gump there. Again, not 80s, but it's going to be the runoff. The creme de la creme also will be Clue and Ferris Bueller, Cocoon, Jewel of the Nile. I will have the predecessor to that, Romancing the Stone. That will be on the bass drum. The Jerk, which will be Unnecessary. And there's the other side. Now, this is where it got a little tricky. I couldn't meet them side by side because of the way the size worked out. So you can see that Back to the Future 2 is on top and Back to the Future 3. So it's going to have this imperfect overlap, but at least it connects through the sequels of Back to the Future. And a little bit of Roger Rabbit, which again, you can make the argument is not the 80s, but still it's cool. And I do have the inside of that already made up. Now, the biggest one I've done so far is the 14-inch, okay? The showcase here will be Karate Kid right there. Above that is Brewster's Millions with Richard Pryor and John Candy. Christmas Vacation, Footloose, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Excalibur, and so on. Tootsie's on there, Full Metal Jacket, Flight of the Navigator, Weekend at Bernie's. There's Rocky 1, okay? I'm going to include Rocky 1 on there. Next to it is his nemesis, Schwarzenegger, with Running Man. I will have Twins and Terminator, but I believe that will all be on the bass drum. Field of Dreams and Pretty Woman is going to be the overlapping piece on that. On the far end of Karate Kid will be Better Off Dead. Let me see if I can get that in the shot. Big, Never Ending Story, The Right Stuff, which was great, about the Mercury missions, not the Apollo missions. And The Outsiders and Karate Kid, not Karate Kid, Crocodile 2. So those are going to be, those are already done. They've already been to the laminator. They look great. I actually just picked them up. And so basically, I'm not going to film me doing a lot of them. I'm just going to show you basically this step. I'm going to go ahead and make them or put them on the shells like I did in the last video. And I will then show you the finished result here in a moment, okay? And then, yeah, we'll go from there. But it's not going to be so procedural as the other videos. So we'll have more of a before-after kind of effect. And this is the 10 inch, and let's face it, the money one is Ghostbusters. Right above it, Spaceballs. You can see I'm using the Atlas brackets, which are really great. Indiana Jones Temple Dune, Three Amigos. You can see where my seam is. It's right on The Great Outdoors with John Candy and Dan Aykroyd. Both of their faces got cut off. We've got Lean on Me, The Natural, The Money Pit, Jaws. I'm ashamed that I had to cut Raising Arizona, but most of it, the prominent part of the VHS. The other one that's really cool, and I'm glad it didn't cover over Dudley Moore's face there, Arthur, you know, Airplane, Willy Wonka's, and then back. Now remember, inside is the outside of the VHS. So that's the 10-inch. All right, now we've got the 12-inch, okay? So the prominent one on this one is Coming to America. Probably one of my favorites, top 5, so I definitely wanted to feature it really well. Again, on top is Down and Out Beverly Hills. That got kind of cut off. And the nice thing about once I got to the 12-inch ones is that I was able to do full size on the bottom, full size next to it on the top. So now it's staggered a little bit more where I can use more of the VHS full covers back and forth, back and forth. So we got Clue, Princess Bride, which looks really good. Okay, Ferris Bueller, again, full VHS on that one. Above it is, okay, I know it wasn't the 80s, but Silence of the Lambs, okay? So I wanted to include that one. Cocoon, Jewel of the Nile, Steve Martin's The Jerk, which is, it's funny because most of these have a little bit of a white backing or prominent blues and pinks and, you know, those typical 80s colors, like even Down and Out in Beverly Hills has that pink hue to it. Let's face it, there's going to be a couple on there where there's this like oddball color, so that yellow from Steve Martin's The Jerk sticks out, but in a beautiful way. Now this overlap was awkward, okay? Most of them met into each other really well, so this one did not. I used some throwaway ones. That's why I used mostly 90s stuff on this. Back to the Future 2 versus Back to the Future 3. I mean, I would have loved it to just be Back to the Future 2 meeting into each other, but it didn't do that well. Roger Rabbit and I don't know. I think there's Forrest Gump right there. Again, a little bit of a 90s era section there. Naked Gun. The title got cut off by the lug a little bit, which is shameful. The Living Daylights. Timothy Dalton. That was my James Bond era. Iron Eagle, very prominent. And vice versa. But look at there. Pee Wee Herman. I'm so glad that he didn't get covered over with the hardware. His bicycle did. And we have Heather's meeting back into Coming to America. Inside, again, is the covers. And I think I did a pretty good job. Like, if you look at Ferris Bueller, right behind there is Ferris Bueller's back cover, okay? So that is the 10-inch. All right, the biggest one I've done thus far is the big 14, actually it's 14 by 12, I believe, or 14 by 13 tom. The most prominent one on this is Karate Kid. That will be faced forward. Right above that, Brewster's Millions with Richard Pryor. Now, I didn't mean to do this, but I didn't realize that Chevy Chase and Richard Pryor are making the same dumb face. So didn't mean to do that, but it was a nice coincidence. I liked that the prominent part of Footloose is being shown. Raiders, right above that, John Borman's Excalibur. We've got Al Pacino's Scarface. Tootsie, right above it. Flight of the Navigator, Full Metal Jacket, Weekend at Bernie's, Rocky, the original. Schwarzenegger's The Running Man, which I hear they're doing a reboot of that again. And we got Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner's face got really mulled over. Again, this one met into itself a little better, but it just, because the space allowed, Pretty Woman versus Michael J. Fox's Secret to My Success, that just got eaten into each other a little bit, okay? You can kind of make out what they are. Let's face it, the Pretty Woman iconic down title is very prominent, and most of Julia Roberts' leg there. We've got The Outsiders and Crocodile Dundee 2. Now, one will be on the bass drum, Never Ending Story, The Right Stuff, and then back into it, okay? So, yeah, and then inside, again, I did a pretty good job at making sure all the back covers were meeting into its it's correlating front cover there. But the other thing I'm going to have to make a decision on these is that, all right, I was going to leave the bottom raw. If you look at like Phil Collins' concert toms from like the 80s and 90s, he used mostly Gretsch in that era. They were just raw finishes. I really don't like that how polished this looks. This looks unfinished. So I'm going to be experimenting with what they call auto trim. Basically, it's a bendable chrome that's U-channeled, and I'm going to see if that actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to order a little bit of it. Worst case scenario, I return it. But I want to see if I could just put a decorative trim on the bottom of it, because as much as I worked on the rest of the drums and making sure those bearing edges were cut, which you're not going to be able to, do anything with those bearing edges as far as other than like, waxing them, which I did. This just looks unfinished. So I'm going to experiment with those. So they're not finished, but they do look really good, as you can see in these video of the drum set now. But yeah, look how good that looks against each other. It's very busy. Everybody who's seen it in person have said the same thing, which is, boy, it looks good, but you really have to like focus your eyes in an area to appreciate the whole, right? The whole effect of it, because it could just look so busy that it just looks like a collage of nonsense. But once you kind of see it up close, you start to see, oh yeah, how much they meet into each other very well, okay? So that is the 8, 10, 12, and 14 all finished, okay? And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and finish out the toms this week, just because of the winter and everything being a little awkward with the holidays, sicknesses, all that. That's slowing down the production. But I do realistically see that this thing's going to be done probably by March. So this video is all about the 8, 10, 12, and 14, and I will see you next time on those floor toms.